Fakhr Al-Din Al-Razi was an Islamic scholar, polymath and scientist of the 12th century. He wrote various works in the fields of medicine, physics, astronomy, theology and philosophy. Al-Razi claims that there are two paths that one can take to discover divine truth, the mystical path and the rational path. The mystical path posits that when a human being purifies his heart and rids his life of all that is other than God, he attains an intuitive and experiential proof of the divine. The second path is the rationalistic or intellectual path to God, which consists of deducing the knowledge of self-evident and necessary truths that ultimately lead to the conclusion that an independent and necessary being exists, which is conventionally named in English as God. Al-Razi states, the path to knowledge of the divine has two routes. The first is that of the people of theoretical inquiry and inferential reasoning, and the second path is spiritual exercise and striving. The field of study that deals with the knowledge of God and other abstract entities is termed metaphysics and consists of demonstrating through logical inference and reasoning the existence of a necessary being. That is, this being is necessary due to its very nature, which causes the existence of all other non-necessary or contingent beings. Al-Razi explains the science of metaphysics as pursuing the study of non-corporeal or immaterial entities, the most noble of which is knowledge of God and his attributes. Al-Razi states, spiritual pleasure is better and more virtuous than physical pleasure, and the chief spiritual pleasure and the most pure is knowledge of the first principle and its attributes. Ultimately, Al-Razi argues that the coalescence of both these paths should be the predominant occupation of a person in order to approach the divine. Just as God unravels the creation of the universe, a person's soul and intellect have a duty to ascend the hierarchy of spiritual realities towards the divine in an attempt to return to its creator. Al-Razi claims that metaphysical principles and logically sound conclusions are immutable established truths, irrespective of time and place. He writes, true knowledge and certain pursuits, which do not differ with variances in time and place, and do not change with the shifting of religious codes and religions, the most excellent of which is knowledge of existences abstracted from materials, which are far from faculty and preparedness. Here, Al-Razi is demonstrating that knowledge and the attempt to obtain an understanding of the true nature and essence of existent things is the most fitting and excellent of pursuits of the intellectual journey. It is a field of study that does not change due to time or place and is objective in the truest sense. This is the study of self-evident principles, which do not need proof themselves, as they are true by their very nature. They are not opinions or suppositions, but concrete propositions that are universally true, like 2 and 2 is 4, and a thing cannot exist and simultaneously not exist. Doubting these types of postulates leads to contradiction and absurdity. However, it must be stressed that this intellectual pursuit is not merely a dry and laborious study of logic and philosophy. It is in fact an attempt to apprehend the fundamental reality of existence and a sincere endeavor to purify the mind and heart, to traverse and discover the layers of spiritual realities, which ultimately leads to the knowledge of God's essence and his attributes, which are the highest in this order of lofty and noble stations. Ignorance, Al-Razi claims, of the knowledge of the first principle and of its attributes leads to requisite continual affliction and absolute loss, while apprehension of it leads to requisite eternal felicity and perpetual reign. Al-Razi argues that ignorance and knowledge is tied to your success in both this life and the hereafter. Knowledge of the divine being and the procurement of metaphysical truths not only affects your happiness and overall contentment in this world, but can have repercussions in the life to come. If an individual is endowed with the requisite mental capacity and has the luxury and ability to acquire such knowledge, but neglects to do so, the individual may be accountable for his inaction. Al-Razi contends that the majority of humans do not and in fact cannot ascend the hierarchy of metaphysical realities and achieve knowledge of the divine essence. The general population of man is stuck within the sensory realm and imagination, and he struggles or is unwilling to procure the intellectual and spiritual ascension that is truly befitting of him. The second path to the divine and the apprehension of spiritual mysteries is the purification of the soul, to discipline and rectify the inner spiritual dimension of the human being. Al-Razi explains this by stating, it is the verified, conquering, wondrous path For if the human being labors in purifying his heart of the remembrance of not God, and persists with the tongue of both his body and his spirit in the remembrance of God, light, illumination, an overpowering state, and a lofty power occur in his heart. And lofty lights and divine secrets are revealed to the substance of the soul. And these are stations that one who has not reached cannot comprehend in a particular manner. Here, Al-Razi is using distinct language to demonstrate the reality of spiritual ascension through spiritual growth. It is not merely blind faith or inherited tradition, but a proven method of seekers in which the divine light illuminates the heart of the individual as he or she ascends the various mystical stations. This ascension, however, is not for the faint of heart, but an arduous and sustained effort to dive into the depths of one's soul and eradicate all that is other than God. That is to say, it is a gradual transformation achieved through unwavering discipline. O you who have believed, persevere and endure, and remain stationed and fear God, that you may be successful. Although it must be noted that not everyone is equipped or is drawn to this path, so it is crucial that one exerts himself in this wondrous and awe-inspiring science of the soul so that he is worthy of being in the divine presence. For if the soul of man is busied with base desires, then it will only lead to disruption and aversion, and he will lose that primordial connection to the divine. Al-Razi indicates, if the person exerts himself in striving to remove these bodily accidents and is left with the gem of the soul and its original attributes after the concealing dust and hindering cover have lifted, then the light of the majesty of God appears in him. If the human being occupies himself with that which is other than God, then he will cut himself off from drowning in spiritual mysteries, and he will be incapable of rising through the divine ranks. Thus, it is essential for the individual who is seeking divine illumination to labor in God's path. Just as the miner seeks to discover precious gems and metals within the cave of the spirit must be cultivated to attain the lights of the magnificence of God. Al-Razi maintains that the individual who successfully combines and traverses both the intellectual and spiritual path is truly on his way to achieving felicity in this life and success in the life to come. As it is said that the one who takes part in corporal pleasures is akin to debasing one's soul to the level of beasts, while to focus on that which is spiritual and intellectual raises the soul to the level of angels. The task, therefore, of the human being, Al-Razi proclaims, is to shed bodily attachments and base desires and to perfect its knowledge so that it may join with those who acquire divine lights in their hearts and scale the ranks of the celestial realm. As it is declared in the Quran, say, are those who know equal to those who do not know? Only they will remember who are people of understanding.